Welcome back to USA Alert Zone, where we expose the latest U.S. immigration news, policy traps, and enforcement crackdowns before they happen. Today's episode is critical, especially for those applying for marriage-based green cards in 2025. USCIS has entered a new era of aggressive enforcement, and if you're not careful, even a real marriage can land you in trouble. So here's the shocking truth. If USCIS suspects marriage fraud in 2025, you're not just facing denial. You could be looking at deportation, a lifetime ban, and even federal prison time up to 5 years. Let's break it all down. Why USCIS is cracking down in 2025. Since early 2025, USCIS has been instructed to increase fraud detection efforts, particularly in the marriage-based green card category. Why? Because data shows a rise in fraudulent filings. And with political pressure mounting, the agency is shifting from benefit granting to fraud investigation. Officers are now trained to assume fraud unless you prove otherwise. And that changes everything. What triggers a marriage fraud investigation? You might think USCIS only targets fake marriages with obvious red flags. But in 2025, even legitimate couples are under heavy scrutiny. Here's what could set off a fraud investigation. Conflicting answers during your green card interview. Submitting lease agreements or photos that don't align with your timeline. Missing joint bank accounts, utility bills, or shared tax returns. Living apart, temporarily, but without solid proof. Filing right after marriage with minimal relationship history. Even your social media activity is under review. If you look like strangers online, that could hurt your case. Real-life 2025 cases, shocking examples. Let's look at real cases from just the last few months. In New York, a couple submitted a fake lease and were caught during a site visit. Both are now in removal proceedings, and the U.S. citizen is facing criminal charges. In Texas, a green card was denied when USCIS noticed the applicant's Instagram showed him partying alone in another city, despite claiming he lived with his spouse full-time. And in California, a woman was detained after failing to answer basic questions about her spouse's work schedule during their I-130 interview. She had no joint documents, and USS ruled the marriage as entered solely for immigration purposes. This isn't rare anymore. The legal consequences of marriage fraud. Here's what you could face if USCIS determines your marriage is fraudulent. Immediate denial of your green card. A permanent bar from entering the U.S. again. Removal proceedings or ICE detention. Federal charges for immigration fraud. Up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Even if your spouse is a U.S. citizen, you both could be charged if the government proves you knowingly filed a fraudulent petition. How USCIS investigates you in 2025. USCIS uses a multi-layered system to investigate applicants. Here's what they're doing behind the scenes. Cross-checking public records and rental agreements. Reviewing your travel history, credit reports, and employment. Using AI tools to analyze your social media presence. Conducting unannounced home visits. Interviewing your friends, coworkers, and neighbors. And remember, USCIS can reopen your case years after approval if they discover fraud later. What you must do to protect your case. Let's talk solutions. If your marriage is genuine, protect yourself by gathering strong evidence. Photos are not enough. Include leases, joint bank statements, insurance, travel history, and taxes. Being honest and consistent. Don't try to memorize fake answers for interviews. Officers are trained to spot that. Preparing for your interview. Know key dates, anniversaries, and major events in your relationship. Avoiding shortcuts. Never submit fake documents or altered timelines. If caught, it's not just denial, it's federal time. Hiring a qualified immigration attorney, especially if your case has any complexities or red flags. Special warning, real couples are at risk too. Don't assume you're safe just because your marriage is real. In 2025, USCIS is not giving the benefit of the doubt. If your documents are weak or your timeline seems suspicious, even unintentionally, you could still be denied or referred to ICE. Final words from USA Alert Zone. Marriage-based green cards used to be the easiest path to U.S. residency. But in 2025, they've become one of the most legally dangerous categories. You must treat this process like you're under investigation, because you are. Stay updated by subscribing to USA Alert Zone, where we don't just give you immigration headlines, We expose the truth behind the system. Your safety and legal future depend on staying informed. Let us know in the comments. Have you or someone you know faced tough USCIS interviews recently? Share your experience. It could help others.